So, have you ever wanted to automate a pipeline, maybe set a model up for refresh on a regular basis, or connect with a gateway, but you don't want to connect using your own user ID because, well, frankly, like, what if your ID gets locked, or what if someone else's ID who's running something they leave the organization, right? Like that would cause all sorts of chaos and havoc. Well, in the old world, when we just got the wheel and we were learning how to use Fire and we had servers on prem, we'd do a thing called a service or a server ID, where it's just basically an ID that allowed you to log into the server. You knew the ID and the password. It was real, it was like a basic authentication, right? That worked out great because, we didn't have all sorts of other people coming in to our network. So, there was less fear of that. Well, now we're in the cloud. We're in this shiny new place. We have to be very protective of our information, our data, and how people connect in. Well, what do we do when we have those same types of needs of not wanting to have an individual tied to something, but you want to have like like a service that's principally designed to make that connection? Well, in Azure, there's a thing called a service principal that allows you to do what we used to do with the server ID out in Azure. In today's video, we're going to be running through how you configure it, how you set it up, how you integrate it, and then most importantly, how you test it out. I can't wait to show you. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be fantastic. Okay, but before we head over to my laptop, I want you to smash that like button, hit that subscribe bell so you don't miss any of my future updates, and maybe even go down and leave a comment. Are you using service principles? I don't believe you. Are you? Tell me. Let me know if you are. If you're not, like, what challenges do you have? Love to hear about that. All right, and then best case, hit that subscribe button, share it to your friends and family and coworkers, and be like, hey. Chris is talking about this thing called a service principal. This is something we got to use. All right. Okay. Let's head over to my desktop. Great. First thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be going into creating a service principal. All right. That's done inside of Azure. So you have to head over to portal.azure.com. And we do this through creating an app registration. So I'm going to click on my app registrations. And I'm going to be going in and creating a new ID. So I'm going to say a new registration, and I'm going to give it a name. So this is going to be my KBI service principal demo. Where are we at? Yeah, service principal demo. It's going to be accounts in this organization, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff's okay. Yeah, that's no big deal. And then we're going to register it. We're going to see that it gets created. And now the first thing I'm going to do, and this is really important, is I'm going to capture the application ID. I'm going to paste that to a notebook or a little notepad, and I'm going to capture my tenant ID or my directory ID. Okay. Those are two things that I'm going to be using quite a bit. And I don't want to like lose them or miss out on them. So I'm going to grab them, copy them. Heck, I'm actually going to copy this one again because I didn't do one part of it. I didn't paste it right. Boom. All right. Now I have captured in here the name, the app ID, the tenant ID, and then what I did, and this is important, is I created what the sign in ID is going to look like. Okay. And that is comprised of app colon, the app ID up to the at sign, and at sign, and then the tenant ID beyond that. Okay. So this is the equivalent of the email when it comes to signing in that I'd be using. Okay. Now, I'm not going to show you any more of this screen because we're about to like put in a secret. The secrets are something that you have to be very careful of. This is what will allow that access to persist. And if someone gets hold of that and they have what I just showed you, they'd be able to go in and like run amok and do things for you. Now, for those of you who are sharp-eyed and like figure out what these things are for this, I'm not terribly worried. Number one, I don't have anything suspicious in my tenant. Number two, I'm going to have deleted all of this by the time you see this video. So I'm not concerned because I'm going to blow it all away. Okay. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we go in and we assign our roles or our API permissions. Okay. Now, once I click on this, I want to make sure I go in and that I add permissions. I'm going to be looking for Fabric or the Power BI service to enable that. Now, I happen to know at the time of this video, there's no Fabric services in here because I've already looked. It doesn't exist. We're talking Power BI services. So I'm going to find the Power BI service. I'm going to select this service. Now, I could choose to delegate permissions, and they're going to be like at the equivalent of like an individual user. There might be some use cases for this, but I'm going to focus in for the purpose of this video on the application permissions. Okay. So what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to establish for this ID tenant read all and tenant read write all. Okay. So by checking these, what this is going to do is allow this ID to be able to see everything that I have in Fabric, read everything that's out there, and more importantly, write everything that I have in Fabric. So the creation of stuff or anything I need to do in the space, this ID is going to have all the access that I need to have that in order to do that. So I'm going to say, okay, add permissions. Now, look at this right here. I added them, but it says it's not been granted. What the heck? I just added them, right? Why would it say not given if it wasn't? Well, that's because these are admin uh, level permissions, and you need a tenant admin in order to grant these permissions. Okay. Fortunately, I am said tenant admin, so I'm going to click on grant permissions. It's going to ask me to confirm because again, I'm giving this tenant level access. Right, you don't want to necessarily do this for anything and everything. Then you know the other path you go down that other path of user based permissions for that. Okay, for this, I'm going to say yes. It's going to think, and then I'm going to, very importantly here, I'm going to have all green boxes right here. Okay, if you don't see green boxes on everything, that means you don't have everything set up right. Okay, so we're going to get out of that. Once this is in place, I want to make sure that I go in and that I add an owner onto this. So I'm going to say add owners, and I'm going to go find myself. The data god. I'm going to add that in, and I've got my owners here. Okay, this just ensures that as an individual, I'm going to be able to access this ID and do different things with it. It's kind of important to go out and do that. Okay, now the big thing that we're going to be doing right next is we're going to be creating a certificate and a secret to go along with this. So this is the equivalent of the password that we're going to be creating. It's important when you create this that on the screen that you capture this password, because once you kind of go away from this, you can't come back and get that password, that the value of that secret again. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to say new client secret. It's going to ask me, what is this new client secret for? Oops. I'm going to say for a demo, right? Because it's just for the purpose of this demo. Microsoft recommends that you expire it after 80 days. You could do it longer, up to 24 months, or you can go into custom. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to say recommended 6 months. That's perfectly fine. And say add. Okay. Once that's out there, I've got to get this secret ID. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste that into my little notes that I was taking so I don't lose this. Okay. Um, Now, right now, I've kind of got everything into place and I've finished what I need to do when it comes to creating my service principal. But that's not it. I need to make sure that my service principal is part of an Entra ID group, and that Entra ID group is then going to be used in assigning access and capabilities to that group. And someplace we'll use both. Okay, so you need to have both of these things in place in order to make sure that this works. So we're going to go in and create that ID group by simply going back home and heading into Microsoft Entra. Now, I do something where for these service principal groups, I try to keep it on a one-to-one basis, like an ID and a group, and then I use those together It is possible to do those lower level groups and then combine them. I'm trying to keep this really simple here. So I've gone into Entra. I'm going to go over to groups. I'm going to say create a new group. All right. I want it to be a security type group. And I'm going to paste in the service principal demo ID. It's same name. I'm going to say GRP at the end of it. So I know I've got the group. Now, I like this because then when I'm going into assign access, I can just paste in the name of the service principal, and it's going to either pull up the service principal and I'll be good to go, or if the access require or for an individual, if the access requires individual access, I could just do that. If the access is requiring a group access, this will then filter down to the groups, and it's a nice pattern. Okay. So I'm gonna go in and see, like, okay, I've created this. Hang on. Now I want to select some owners on this. Now I am a big fan of making sure that I set up the service principal itself as the owner, but I also want to be the owner of this. So I'm gonna go in and set myself up as owner as well. Okay, so those are the IDs of the owners. Again, this is the ID that allows them to do different things within there, and that we'd want to then be able to grant access. Now, note, this is something that often gets missed, is that we need to define them as a member. In fact, most Microsoft documentation misses this or doesn't call this out. I guess it's presumed that you know this, but that you if you don't add them to the member space, then whatever access you've created for them, uh, you won't, or if you're sharing access via that Entra ID group, they won't get access to it through that. But if you go in and make them a member of the group, then they're going to be okay. All right. So I'm going to say now create. All right. Now my IDs are ready and I'm ready to move on to the next thing. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be going into the tenant admin space inside of Fabric and making sure that we give that group access to be able to work and do things inside of Fabric, right? We've said you can create, you can read everything and you can write and do stuff inside of Fabric, but we like to have MFA when it comes to configuring access, especially at these type of service level concepts. So we're going to be going in and make sure the admin section has that group added to their service. Okay. So in order to do that, I'm going to head into Fabric and I'm going to go up here into my gear. I'm going to go down to my admin portal. All right. Now there's a ton of stuff that you can find in here. I've got videos on the admin stuff. I might need to update it because there's been a ton of updates. But for the purpose of this one, I'm just going to type in service uh, principles. All right, and here we go. Allow service principals to create and use profiles. Yes. Oh, allow service principals can use Fabric APIs. Yes, this is what I want to do. But I want to make sure that my AD group has been added. So I'm just going to paste that back in here. You saw that was there. I'm going to click on apply. That should now be giving me access to it. I'm going to quick close that out. I'm going to quick take a look at the other service principal settings. Okay, entire organization. Service principals can read only access IDs. Yep. This is the one we'd want them to be in. So I'll just make sure that that's in there as well. And everything else is disabled. Okay. So this looks like we should be done with step 3. All right. Now, step 4 requires that we go in and we configure the access to uh, the workspace by for both the for both the service principal and the service principal group. Okay, so we're gonna head in and I'm gonna show you how to do that as well. Let's get that up. All right. So inside of the Fabric service, I'm going to go into my workspace and I'm going to go and I'm going to create uh, a new workspace in order to get this up and running. So I'm going to say create workspace. And I'm going to call this one serve print testing. Wait. Principal testing. I think I might have spelled that right. Maybe not. Doesn't matter. All right. I'm going to create that. Get that ready. Now, I'm going to go into, actually, I've got to check settings on the premium capacity. I'm going to be testing the XMLA endpoint because that's going to be the hardest one to test. So I do want to make sure that this is set up with either premium per user or premium capacity in order to make that work. You can do it with the trial as well, I think, but just to make sure that we lower any chances of having issues, we'll set up with a premium capacity and we'll define a premium capacity. I'm also going to grab that URL string because I'm going to hit apply. And I'm always thinking one step ahead. So I'm going to paste that into my notes. I'm going to have that there. And now I'm going to go back into my manage access. Okay. So from manage access, I'm going to go in. I'm going to say add people or groups. And I'm going to paste in Service Principal Demo. Come on. Oh, let's see here. Come on now. There we go. KBI Service Principal Demo. Here's the app ID. And I do KBI Service Demo Group. So I'm going to add these in. I'm going to make them admins on this workspace. So I click on add. So you can see like they can take just a little bit of time in here. So not the end of the world. But when I close this out and confirm, I've got both of them. They have access here. Okay. So like I said, I want to make sure that I'm testing this out using Management Studio. So I can do all my tests there. Where did my Management Studio go? I'm going to be pissed now, boys and girls. Oh, there she be. All right. So here's Management Studio. I'm going to go in and connect to Analysis Services. And I'm going to use that ID that I set up or that Service Principal group that I set up. But I'm going to go in and make sure that it works with my ID first. So this is my access to that AD group or that workspace I created. So I'm going to type in my ID. All right, hit connect. Okay, oops. And we are on to the testing access. Okay, so I'm going to say, yeah, this is my ID. I'm going to test I get access. Yep. Okay. Oopsies. So I've got access here, so that's good to go. That means I'm ready to test out if I can access it myself. Now, remember, I'm going to be using the app ID or app ID at tenant ID to do this test. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to say, go to analysis services, and I'm going to make a small change here. Instead of this being universal with MFA, with my email ID, I'm going to go and I'm going to change that to Active Directory with password. I'm going to paste in that app ID name. So app, you see it's got app, and then the app ID itself, the underscore or the @ sign, and then the tenant ID is after that. And then I'm going to grab that secret value that I got when I created my app ID, and I'm going to paste it in there. And then we'll click on remember this password. Okay. So this should now all be set up. And if I've successfully done it, when I hit connect, it's going to connect to it. Hey, look at that. And I'm now connected into my ID. I can successfully connect in. Now, with that said, I don't have any data out here, so what are you gonna do? Um, there's just no data there. All right, but all right. So I hope you found that useful. Remember, step one: create your service principal. Step two: create a service principal group. Step three: make sure that group is configured inside of the Fabric admin portal to be able to grant access. Step four: give that app ID and that app ID works or group, Entra ID group, access to the workspace. And step five: go in and test it out to make sure that it works. All right. Uh, I said it before, I'll say it again. I hope you got something out of this. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. Let me know if you found this useful or helpful. Heck, share this around. Get everyone on the service principal hype train. This is pretty cool stuff. Love to hear what you're using service principals for. With that, you have a blessed day. Peace.